Have you ever sat in a corporate meeting, listened to someone present a strategy that you knew was an absolute train wreck, and you looked around the room only to see everyone else nodding? And they're all like smiling and saying things like, "That looks great, Carol, fantastic work." And in that moment, you realize either I'm losing my mind or we're all participating in some kind of collective hostage situation, right? We've all been there. What's truly fascinating here is that when the project goes off the rails inevitably after 3 months, the person at the top, CEO, founder, division head, is always the last person to know. They look at the wreckage and they say, "How in the world did this happen? We had complete alignment in every single meeting." Well, that's exactly why it happened. Today, let's talk about a dynamic that's deeply uncomfortable, intensely human, and happening in almost every boardroom, every team, and every political inner circle right now. Now, we are not talking about corporate spies, competitors launching a daylight raid on your market share, or like obvious saboteurs trying to hack your system. Those are actually easy to deal with. An open enemy lets you put on your armor and just play a clean game of chess. Instead, we're talking about the people who actually want you to succeed. The loyalists, right? Your trusted inner circle. And why, completely without meaning to, their survival instinct makes them the single greatest threat to your vision. In national security and intel, we use a beautifully sterile academic term for this pathology. It's called the principal-agent divergence. Since we're not trying to write a thought piece today, let's just call it what it actually feels like when you're steering the ship. It's like the slow, exceptionally polite divergence of trust, right? And how, like an obsession with harmony, leaves the smartest leaders completely blind. Now, we don't really need to look at like ancient history to see how this plays out. We see it in the modern marketplace today, every single day, particularly in the tech and product development sectors. So let's look at a scenario that plays out in almost every scaling enterprise, the product launch bubble. Imagine a company developing a major new software platform or like a flagship product line, right? The CEO announces the initiative with like massive fanfare. Board approval locked in, millions in capital allocated, launch date set for Q4. The entire corporate identity is now tied to that victory. Now enters the product team. 6 months into development, the engineers discover a flaw in the architecture. If they launch on time, the product will be unstable. But look at the political landscape from the product manager's perspective. The CEO is telling the media and the contacts that this launch is like the future of the company. VP of marketing has already bought the ad space. If that PM raises their hand in the weekly meeting and says, the architecture's broken, we really need to push launch back to like 6 months. What happens? They disrupt the harmony. They become the problem child of the division. They risk their bonus, their standing, their peace of mind. So what do? They massage the baseline, right? They don't lie, they just kind of change the reporting structure. They code a temporary patch, and they report that the milestones are like on track with the minor adjustments. They tell the leadership tier exactly what it needs to hear to remain comfortable, fully intending to pull off a miracle behind the scenes before anyone notices. Except the QA team below them is doing exactly the same thing to their manager. So by the time the status report hits the C-suite, the friction on the ground has like been completely laundered out. So the CEO isn't looking at a realistic operational assessment. They're looking at a beautifully formatted green light dashboard, right, designed to protect the comfort of the hierarchy. They are entirely powerful, entirely accountable, and entirely blind. The micropolitics of decline, they don't look like an open failure. They look like a series of these like exceptionally clean, synchronized status reports right up until the day the product crashes on launch. So how does this play out in a modern company or a growing brand? And how does a team that starts with high trust and shared ambition slowly slide into this Phoenician trap? It happens in these like almost imperceptible human phases. And it begins when your advisors realize that you possess what I call the prestige trap. So this happens when a leader is like so emotionally invested in a specific strategy, Usually because it's the thing that made them successful in the past, right? That challenging it feels like an existential threat. So when an advisor spots an early friction point that proves the old way isn't working, their brain performs like this rapid calculation. Option A, tell the boss the raw truth. Deal with the emotional aftermath, right? And ruin the vibe of the room. Option B, soften the edge, adjust the optics, and preserve the peace. They end up choosing option B every single time. Now, not because they want you to fail, but because humans are wired to choose comfortable lies over a costly truth in the short term, right? And this is where the divergence hardens into corporate theater. As the founder or leader, your risk is absolute. If the company fails, your reputation, your legacy, your capital, they go down with the ship. But your team, their risk is relative. Their survival instinct isn't tied to the long-term execution of your vision. It's tied to their immediate standing within the hierarchy, right? And they start practicing the art of plausible deniability. They ensure that if your pet project fails, their names aren't etched into the specific memo that authorized it. And they focus on looking busy, they hit vanity metrics, right? And they keep their personal perimeter safe while the core architecture is like silently cracking. So this is the most dangerous phase, right? And it's pretty subtle. It's the moment your team stops arguing with you entirely. When you present a grand, highly ambitious idea and the room is like completely silent, or worse, like filled with like intense, enthusiastic applause, you have not won the debate. You've just triggered the silent veto. Your people have looked at the personal cost of trying to correct a determined leader. They decided it's too expensive to fight and resolved to let you run headfirst into the wall while they quietly polish their resumes. They validate your blind spot because it's the safest place for them to hide. If you're a leader, a founder, or an executive sitting in that lonely seat at the top, how do you survive an environment where loyalty itself is weaponized to keep you oblivious? Well, you have to change your internal tradecraft. You have to stop managing for harmony and start managing for friction. First, you have to distrust instant consensus. If your team agrees on a highly complex, high-risk maneuver in under like 15 minutes, do not pop the champagne. You should probably panic. It means the gatekeepers have already like filtered out the variance and the difficult questions before they reached your desk. 2, you need a detached perimeter. An insider faces a massive political tax for telling you your favorite strategy is broken. Their salary, their bonus, their internal alliances, they all depend on your favor, right? An outside practitioner or advisor, they owe you absolutely nothing to your internal rituals, your corporate mythology, or your ego. They don't have to live in your palace, right? Which means they are the only ones who can afford to look you in the eye and tell you that your map does not match the terrain. Finally, you have to change what you reward. If you only reward solutions, your team will hide problems until they become too catastrophic to conceal. You have to make the introduction of raw, uncomfortable friction the highest value currency in your culture. You have to make it safer for an advisor to break your illusion than to maintain your comfort. So the next time you look at your leadership team, your board, or your closest circle of advisors, look past the clean presentation slides and their shared history and ask yourself a very cold clinical question. Are these people protecting the execution of my vision, or are they just protecting their relationship with the visionary? Because true strategic betrayal doesn't arrive with a loud bang or an obvious villain. It arrives on tiptoe, wrapped in a beautiful status report, delivered by someone you deeply trust who simply chose to let you be comfortable instead of letting you be right. Keep your perimeter secure, read the baseline, not the laundered reality. See you in the next one.